Talk Show.
Recorded live.
Time. And time for the Toyota Let's Go Winter event.
Rocko Radio exclusive. Red and black attack is in full effect, nigga. Compton squad up, nigga. ORS in full effect. Represent for real. On some God shit. I'm trying to tell these niggas what's hotter than a hot nigga. What's hotter than a hot nigga?
Jello, holla at me.
The comedic have a turn, bitch. And you can't get hotter than this guy, yeah? Red lock niggas stepped about the snake, bitch. All up in the mix, putting on the fucking rig. Got the freak mama trying to send me dick, bitch. Ain't the bitches trying to set me up a dick, bitch. No hoe, but I break her off like quick. Split it down the middle, you ain't getting out, bitch. Got up, there's a bit before the hallway. Five something more harder than an earthquake. This a mean the brownie, just make me happy. Fuck lean, bitch, I'm eating marijuana gang. Hit the fucking block, what the fuck you supposed to got? I got shit to do, but I got how the fuck you got. Black mask, got the marijuana supposed to got. The herb that was supposed to make you see it out the guy. Then I'm out to get some grub and pussy. The whole time, handling business, boy, I ain't no rookie. I hit the studio, smelling like herbs and pussy. No gotta steal like Bill when you got the pussy. But King Low back the car, sneaking up the fucking block. CSI, bitch, investigative murder cop. Perks on the street like, oh my God, they kill a guy. They looking at the same ones that fulfill the mind. CPC, nigga, legendary in the status. ORS, we the baddest, crucifying addict. Infiltrating Operation Wonderland and Alice. Right up under your nose, Botanica addict. Not quite Santeria. Weird shit, shout out to me, Brujeria. Ooh la la, I am a mi sexecita. Dumb with it, sliding up in that tortilla. With stock, sacred spot on Alameda. Ritual ground in Long Beach by Carmelita. We curse and crackers and we curse and crack Jesus. I've been a god, nigga, since I was a fetus. This that hot shit, look at how the guy gets. This that hot shit, look at how the guy gets. This that hot shit, look at how the guy gets. This that hot shit, look at how the nigga gets. I must admit this on some hot shit. I must admit I'm on some hot shit. I must admit this on some hot shit. But you can't get hotter than this guy gets. Bitch, CBT in full effect, nigga. Home of a whole lot of hot niggas. But what's hotter than a hot nigga? A god nigga. King of them says I'm hot shit.
Brother asked last night what made me do it. I think I was probably at a business game, and I was amazed by the number of us that stood up to their flag. And we all know that that flag has never represented us or our freedom. So at this time, like the cracker would ask you to do, I'm going to ask you all to stand. Put your black power fist in the air. If any of you want the lyrics to this song or want the song, I do have a CD back there. If you want the song in particular, I will give it to you. Because as the brother said, this is something that we should have at our event. So, Black Power event?
Black Power!
Oh, say, can you see crackers already as they do for their life and plan by people divine, whose bright and bright stars represent all the stars inflicted upon the race, a great people is saved. Now the time has come for the revolution, as we creep through the night and take hold of their lives. Oh, say does that red flag free every glance that way?
Black Power!
Down their land of the free, forever
Black Power, BB48, Mountain Hotel. Welcome to Feet on the Ground Radio. This your brother Ball. We come to get it in. Go to the house Saturday. Set it off right. Praise to the ancestors. Praise Nat Turner. Glory to Garvey. Long live the spirit of Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad. Praise Harriet Tubman. Glory to Ida B. Wells. Long live the spirit of Sister Fannie Lou Hamer. Black Power family. Black Power. Black Power. Go to the house Saturday. And, Slaughterhouse Saturday is always a praise to the ancestors, you know what I mean? It's always a night that we normally get it in with the spirit of Dr. John Henry Clark, who's still portraying the African Revolution, you know what I mean? And a little bit of Dr. Amos Wilson in there. We always want to make sure that we always on point for that blueprint of Black Power. And one thing that we must always be cognizant of is the elders who've already brought forth a lot of information to us and have already done things that we trying to redo over when we don't even need to redo them over. We just need to look at what was already laid down and move forward from there. You know what I mean? Stand on it and keep going. So, with that being said, though, we're going to we're going to have Dr. Ben, we're going to rock with the Dr. Ben tonight. Let's see here. Let me get this thing right. We're going to rock with some Dr. Ben. We're going to get we're going to get him in with the debate with the Jew Rabbi Spitzer. You know what I mean? We're going to do that right there. We're going to rock that off nice. We're going to put that in. Let that flow for the family, for the listening audience, and tonight, we're going to give this tribute and memorial to Dr. Ben, today being the year mark from his time passing on into that ancestral realm. So we want to commemorate this, this day and make sure that we, have him in our memory. He passed during our time, you know what I mean? So, we should make sure that we give those praises. So that's what we're going to do tonight. We're just going to rock with a little Dr. Ben. We're going to hit that off. Then we're going to jump into another Dr. Ben. But before we do that, though, let me open my chat room up. And I just want to read something to the family real quick, But Black Power to all the family out there. Before they, what it do? Hold up. I think I'm messing up, though. Black Power. But, yeah, as I said, though, we're going to get this, tonight going to be a tribute to Dr. Ben. And we always like to make sure that we always put emphasis on that we are Africans and all non-Africans are those who are going to always be eternal enemies, who will always have problems with those who are other than self because they're going to want to take that which we have. So from Dr. Ben's The Black Man's North and East Africa, one of the few books that Dr. Ben wrote with a co-author, and that was George Simmons, who was he worked at he was a Caribbean. He worked for at the he worked for let me look in here. I know he worked in New York. He was a teacher, but and let me get his studies right here. Let me see. Let me get this right. An instructor of African and African American and African Caribbean history and culture at Harlem Preparatory School in New York. That's who the brother is. There's a nice book. They wrote this book in 1971. Just when Dr. Ben, he published this his own self first, but then it was republished in 2005 and re-put back out. So I got a republished version of this right here. When we look on page 40, we look on page 40, and we have a paragraph, second paragraph, and it says, why did the Egyptians take very articulate care to show that their Asian, the so-called Semitic captives, slaves in the paintings? Well, hold on. Let me read this correctly to you so you understand the emphasis. It says, Why does the Egyptians take very articulate care to show that they're Asian? In quotations, it says so-called Semitic captives. In quotations, it says slaves. And the paintings on the walls of their pyramid or papyri had exceptionally protruding nose, which was very unlike themselves. Why did the Egyptians not treat their Asian captives, in quotations, Semites, Hamites, Caucasians, and Indo-European Aryans, with greater humanity than they allegedly treated their Nubian, in quotations, Negro captives? Because the ancient Egyptians, people like those one could have met on the streets of Nubia and Kush or in the Harlems of the United States of America, made every effort to show that their Asian captives were, in quotation, slaves, were in fact very different physically, in color, culturally, religiously, and otherwise than themselves. At no time before the so-called Semitic Hyksos invasion of Egypt in 1675 BCE did the Egyptians even consider it necessary to make any distinction between themselves and other Africans, Ethiopians, in quotations, except as it referred to the gods. Yet it was only to those gods which they did not equally share with other Nile Valley Africans, in quotation, blacks. And we have seen that most of the gods of Nubia and Kush were worshipped by the Egyptians. Also, that most of them originated from further south in Punt, in quotations, today's Somaliland, Kenya, and Afra. So I just wanted to put that in. Let it be known that us Africans always consider ourselves as one, and as Dr. Ben says here, that we didn't even start to think to make no distinction between other people until these invaders came in. Then we started to see people that we definitely knew that we were not alike. And the only difference that we had back then would be deities that we worshiped, and a lot of them, though, will still carry on deities. That, the further south you went, you seen some of the deities, some of the oldest, some of the newer deities that you would see in the northern part of what we would call Africa, near Egypt, near modern day what they call Egypt, were deities that you would see in the more southern regions or upper part of the Nile Valley. You know what I mean? You would see that there. You would see those deities that had been there even longer in those areas. So that's what the brother's saying right there. Just letting the people know that we are one African, and we know and understand that it's right and exact to draw distinctions between you and those who are other than self. Black Power. So Black Power, no family on the line. Y'all got anything to add on before we get into the Dr. Ben and in this debate with the rabbi? All right, then. Well, family, we're gonna get it in with the debate then. And what I'm gonna do though, family, is I'm gonna mute y'all lines, so then that way we won't, anybody come in won't get no interference. Let me get this together. We're gonna go with Dr. Ben. It's always better to listen to the elders. Keep trying to reinvent the goddamn wheel. And then, as I said, after Dr. Ben, we're going to play Black Man Wake Up by Dr. Yosef Ben Yakanan. Also, we're going to also throw that in there. That's your fire winner.
That's portions of the letter. Well, I answered Carol Lister, who wrote that letter. She's regional director of the ADL, by inviting her to appear on Like It Is to confront Dr. Ben. Well, the ADL has accepted, and so has Dr. Ben. We'll get things right underway in a moment. Professor Yosef Ben Yekinen, or Dr. Ben as he is popularly known, is an Egyptologist, the author of innumerable books on African history and Egyptology, and has taught for several years at Cornell University. Rabbi Arthur Seltzer is director of the Long Island Regional Office of the Anti-Defamation League and resides in Great Neck, Long Island. Welcome to Like It Is. Maybe we can start with you, Rabbi Seltzer. Did you see the program?
No, I did not see the program, but I have studied the transcript.
Okay. How did you come to this chair today? How did that happen, since you didn't see the program? You were called by the New York office of the ADL and made aware of the program?
Yes, Carol Lister, who originally wrote to you, very much wanted to appear, but because of a conflict of schedule, she asked if I would assume the responsibility of responding in the name of ADL.
All right.
And that's what brings me here.
And she sent you the transcript?
Yes, indeed.
All right. What are your problems with the comments that were made by Dr. Ben in the program?
From the perspective of the ADL, we have numerous difficulties with the statements that were made, and I suspect we'll have an opportunity as the program goes on to discuss specifics. But in an overall general sense, as we study the transcript, Dr. Ben's remarks were full of clearly factual errors, but the kind of errors which were not just matters of detail, but were matters that would lead one down the path of the charge of dual loyalty, which, as Carol Lister indicated in her letter, has been a classic charge of the anti-Semite throughout the generations. The statement that appears in the transcript that was made by Dr. Ben, that a Jewish child makes a statement of allegiance to Israel and makes a statement of allegiance greater than even to his Americanism, is so patently false and outrageous as to make one wonder why such a statement would be made. I must tell you that before joining the staff of the Anti-Defamation League, I served as a congregational pulpit rabbi for 9 years and officiated at countless numbers of bar and bat mitzvahs in my congregations. And I must tell you that never have I heard a more inaccurate statement as to what goes on. The transcript indicates that a Jewish child commits himself that there shall never be another Holocaust, takes upon himself political obligations, takes upon himself the responsibility to fight for the state of Israel. The reality is that in the Jewish tradition, bar mitzvah means a son of the commandments, and a boy becomes a bar mitzvah, a son of the commandments, upon his 13th birthday. A girl, in America, the practice tends to be at 12. According to Talmudic law, she reaches her majority at 12 and a half. The bar mitzvah ceremony most specifically indicates that a Jewish child, a minor, now has reached that stage in life where he is considered an adult Jew in terms of his religious and communal responsibilities. Any statements that are made of commitment by bar and bat mitzvah children or adults as they enter the adult world in the Jewish community are statements of acceptance of the yoke of the commandments, of all that comes with Jewish life, personal, family, communal, and under no circumstances are there statements of political content. But if I could perhaps clarify this a bit more, Dr. Ben then indicated in the transcript, as it appears, that this very statement of loyalty that's made to the state of Israel is the seedbed out of which comes the charge of dual loyalties. And we ask ourselves in the Anti-Defamation League the following question: why would anyone offer such a blatantly false and frankly perverse statement of what it means for a Jewish community to celebrate a religious ceremony of passage? The answer, we might suggest, is the next sentence, which indicates the charge of dual loyalties. This statement was made many, many times throughout the entire transcript. It led in one of his remarks to a statement in discussing about Israel that now we understand about the genocide of the Hebrews as they entered the land. The commitment of a Jewish child to fight for Israel reflects the genocidal entrance of the children of Israel into the land in biblical times. Not only does that have a distinctly political ring to it, it is again an unacceptable statement, if only from the point of view of biblical scholarship, which very clearly has come to understand that those sections that speak of a victorious march of an army of onslaught into the land are certainly later sections of the text edited as kind of national poetry. But if one reads the second book of Samuel in the Bible, one reads very clearly a different version of the immigration of tribes slowly into the land, the entrance into the land, the settlement with other peoples. And indeed, a close reading of the text will indicate that even during the times of King David and King Solomon and after, many non-Hebrews lived side by side with the Hebrews in the land. In effect, there was no such genocide. There was no such destruction. And to even raise the thought that a Jewish child indicates his loyalty to the Jewish people in the context of that historical statement, and it's applied in terms of the Jewish present, is something that, frankly, insulting is, I think, an apt word as far as we understand it. If I may just add one other part to this. The transcript would indicate that Dr. Ben, in his concern for the need in the black community for cultural and ideological structures and unity, which is obviously a laudable and praiseworthy goal, then proceeds to redefine Jewish history and biblical history in a way which may be conducive to his political view, but does violence to history. He refers to Judaism as originating in Africa, that all of Judaism comes from Africa. The reality of the biblical text, one must merely open it to read, is that Abraham comes from Mesopotamia. He comes from the area which we today refer to as the Fertile Crescent. Indeed, what we refer today as Judaism, the religion of the Jewish people, reached its full maturity not in Egypt, but according to many scholars, after the first exile in 586 BCE back into Mesopotamia. The need to rewrite history of other people in order to create a cultural superstructure for oneself does neither justice to the one whose history is being rewritten, nor the one who pursues the worthy goal of cultural structures. And therefore, to tie it up, we find most disturbing the factual mistakes that are replete in this transcript, but of more compelling concern, the ultimate dual loyalty, genocidal, militaristic implications of the state.
Genocidal, you say?
In the reference to the biblical genocide, so it appears in the transcript, that is the term that's used, of the children of Israel as they entered the land. I would certainly not subscribe to such a term. The very fact that it does appear attributed to Dr. Ben in the text, we find to be absolutely, again, insulting and unacceptable.
All right. Dr. Ben, what is your response?
By the way, I have to let the rabbi know I'm much a Jew as he is. Born of a Jewish mother, a Yemenite grandmother, a Yemenite Puerto Rican mother, Ethiopian Hebrew father, Beta Israel, by the way, they call us Palasha for whatever their reasons. Thus, I am as much a Jew as the rabbi or the grand rabbi in Israel, any of the grand rabbis in Israel. If the rabbis state in here that in the book of Genesis there is no mention of the extermination, and I use the word genocide, of the 7 tribes of the Amalekites, the Hittites, the Moabites, the Jebusites, he in his own statement stated that this is ameliorated somewhat in the book of Samuel. Everybody saw that. But the book of Samuel doesn't change the book of Genesis. And we remember that Genesis wasn't written first. It was Exodus. It's at the Council of Jamia that they decided to write Genesis. Jewish race. You know, you have Indian Jews from India, from Kashim Jews, look like any Indian. You have ourselves from Ethiopia. By the way, the rabbi wouldn't forget that it says Moses married the daughter of the high priest of Ethiopia, or Cush. Being a rabbi, he will know this. Moreover, about the Bar Mitzvah, and I went through one like the rabbi went through one at around the same period of time, is the rabbi saying that the Bar Mitzvah is not a commitment to the people. Isn't the Torah demanding? And I don't talk about the Talmud. Talmud is not Torah. The Torah is supposed to have been written by God or passed down, although it was in fact written at the Sanhedrin. The theory, the mythology, the allegories that is written by God or passed down by Moses, again is a myth. That's Jewish mythology, because Moses is dead in around 1196 before the Christian era, whereas the Sanhedrin doesn't release a thing called the Torah until about 700 before the Christian era, which was written from 700 before the Christian era to 500. It took 200 years. There's a commitment in anybody, that any child that's been bar mitzvah, and when you're talking about circumcision of women, that is strictly Western, and it has nothing to do with orthodoxy. They're using the word orthodoxy to mean something. There have been a circumcision. It can't be a circumcision of girls. But anyhow, let us continue. The point is that in the bar mitzvah, it commits the boy. If you commit yourself to the community, there's a call to return to Israel. There's a call that every child, I went through it, that you must come back to Israel. If that is not fact, the rabbi can say what he wants, his position or the ADL position of fear of this. Then let's look at the behavior. It's just like saying today, one time the rabbi, I don't know personally, but the ADL and all the other Jewish organizations, one time didn't even recognize that we exist as falashas. It is something in America. American Jews have decided that they're going to speak for all Jews, and not only for all Jews. You remember they said blacks and Jews. I'm black and Jewish. You're white and Jewish. You're European. You're of European Jewish ancestry. I'm African Jewish ancestry. No more claim to Israel than I have, because there's no Jewish race. Okay, let me continue. The rabbi forgets. He says that Abraham, he points to Judaism coming from Abraham. Then I said that the rabbi obviously have not read the Ten Commandments and their source. Moses is not until about 1346 before the Christian era, 49 years after the death of Amenhotep IV, otherwise known as Akhenaten. Every one of those 12 so-called commandments, and that Moses is supposed to have gotten at Mount Sinai. By the way, Mount Sinai is still in Egypt, in Africa, hasn't gone anyplace. Now, those 10 commandments weren't gotten by Moses. Because I'm Jewish, don't mean that I have to follow the mythology. When you go in any of the major tombs in Egypt, you find those 10 commandments plus 32 more, otherwise referred to as the negative confession. Am I to believe that Moses was born in Mizraim, Egypt, about 1346 before the Christian era, went to school there, become a priest, at age 85 or around there, decided that somebody mistreated his people, and that in every school in Egypt, you had to recite the negative confession, 42 laws, of which they said, I have not killed man or woman, I have not stolen this, I have not. Every one of the so-called 10 commandments is already stated that Moses didn't see it. I would like the rabbi to tell me, where does it show that Abraham taught any of this? I would like the rabbi to tell me, before circumcision in Egypt, where did the Jews have circumcision? They said that Abraham's circumcision is part of what made him Jewish. Then the rabbi must tell me, the worship of the golden calf, which they call the golden calf, isn't that the worship of Hathor, the goddess Hathor? We could go on down.
Well, before we go on, Dr. Ben, let me just intrude. We do need to take a commercial break. We'll pause for breath, and we'll return right after this. Criticisms, Dr. Ben, that was voiced by Rabbi Salter is that you suggested that there is a political overtone in the ritual bar mitzvah, and he objects to this. Can you substantiate your statement?
Gil, if you went to any bar mitzvah, there's a lecture after the young man and before the young man. There's a lecture of the young man's commitment. It is a lecture in my commitment. Every child, if the rabbi is for me that the rabbi doesn't get up and get a lecture about the bar mitzvah, and the youngster doesn't pick out a section of the Torah to read, and that the youngster doesn't get up there and make a commitment to the Jewish community, then I don't know what form of Judaism. I don't know if he's Reform, Reconstructionist, conservative, or Orthodox, or whatever else there may be. But it would be rare to me not to go to a bar mitzvah and not hear the rabbi mentioning the commitment to the Jewish people and to Israel. If, in fact, that rabbi is, unless the rabbi is anti-Israel.
Right. Yes, I think there are a number of things that must be made clear, and the level of misstatements in this are also quite clear. You just repeated, as appeared in the transcript, the statement that the bar mitzvah boy picks out his selection for the morning. But it's rather common knowledge and Jewish practice of centuries that there is a set cycle of the reading of the Torah and the Haftorah, and bar mitzvah children under no circumstances are in a position to pick and choose their Torah portions. Their portions are part of the set calendar prescription of which portions of the Torah progressively are to be read on a given Shabbat, Saturday morning, so that even on this factual level, there's a disturbing lack of accuracy in the presentation.
European Jews don't run Judaism. You don't make Judaism. Among the Falashas, among the Jews from Kashim Jews, we pick. You see, Judaism is run by you. You don't set the standards for Judaism.
So now we're in the process of a double standard of selection. You have indicated in your transcript that this is what occurs in American synagogues by indicating that Jewish children make this statement of loyalty to Israel. Yet when I clarify your misstatement about how Torah readings are selected, you tell me, well, there are other practices aside from the practice here, which may indeed be true. One example being the triennial cycle of the reading of the Torah. But then you can't take the American example and then selectively learn from it something that you choose from another context.
The Jewish child doesn't read the entire sermon of the period. He does select a section within that period. That's all I said. The child doesn't read the entire book or the entire thing that is going to be said on that particular Shabbat. The child has a section within it he reads.
And there are indeed many synagogues, especially in the Orthodox community, in which the entire section is indeed the entire parsha.
So then you admitting that there is divergence between the Jewish synagogue right here in America.
Within the prescripted calendar structure of readings.
All I said is that the child is allowed to pick out. You're saying in the Orthodox, in certain Orthodox, not all, the child must read the entire thing. I'm saying that the child is allowed to pick out a section. What is wrong with that?
According to your transcript, and I won't take the time to find the exact words unless it's required, you make a statement that the child may pick out sections and you use the term Isaiah or from whatever.
Depending on the period of time in which we are.
Depending if Isaiah is indeed part of the text.
Who said not? I mean, you just brought in other words, I said exactly what you're saying, that the child is allowed to pick out that section. Let's say that we're reading the book of Isaiah now, or we're reading the book of Hosea. The child is allowed to pick out of Isaiah a certain section, or the child is allowed in Hosea if we are reading at that particular time, because all the children don't meet bar mitzvah in the same month and at the same time.
One should be clear, however, that that's partially accurate, because part liturgically of what a child is expected to read or participate in, if possible, is the reading from the Torah itself. Indeed, the reading from the Haftorah is a significantly later development, precisely because if a child is a bar mitzvah, is a son of the commandments, then one of his first public possible acts is being called up to the public reading of the Torah, and it's by this act that his reaching adulthood is publicly declared. If I may, however, go on to what I think.
Wait, let's settle this before we move on, and then
I'll be happy to. There were some other points.
Oh yes,
I think
we're going to try to get into all of that. Your response, Dr. Ben.
The point is, everyone I stated is adulthood. The question is not when does he do this, if he's a man or a child, because assume I already stated the Torah would be similar in essence to the confirmation of the Christians. when the child comes of a certain age and take up his manhood, in order to be able to sit in the minyan, to sit in the official congregation as a young man, he has to come and go for the bar mitzvah before he could sit in the minyan.
Okay.
Now, he doesn't deny that. All I'm saying, and which he can't refute, he's saying about later changes. I don't care what the changes, if it's later or earlier. The fact is that they do it.
It's a very curious kind of contextual oversimplification here. On the one hand, Dr. Ben correctly points out certain instances of Egyptian historical input in what we today call the religion of the Hebrews and later Judaism. And no one can deny the role of cultural and historical context. On the other hand, given it would seem your political need to view all through the African perspective, you completely ignore the experience of the Code of Hammurabi, of the Mesopotamian sources of law, which appear significantly modified in later Torah development. What I'm suggesting is that, on the one hand, it is a strange scholarly position to argue that historical context must be accounted for in the development of Judaism, which I would accept, and then argue, however, that only that political context which is useful to your present political view is to be noted and is acceptable. As I read the transcript, as I read the transcript here, there is a comment here that says, and permit me to paraphrase loosely, that Judaism and all of Judaism and the Jewish people come from Egypt, therefore they are African, and therefore there is a statement later on that many blacks do not understand that they are indeed Jews. Now that raises to us a very curious question: why the constant need to inject a racial quota into a diverse historical context, which we would acknowledge, but yet on the other hand, as we sit here having watched Operation Moses and the ingathering of Ethiopian Jews into Israel, why then the need to define by race as what is essentially authentic in Judaism strikes us as a contradiction that at least can possibly be interpreted in terms of current political context, but certainly not by history.
All right. I'm glad that you brought that last point, so I work from the last forward or backwards. Isn't it strange that just yesterday that the Jews in America found out that they are black Jews? Isn't it strange also that you don't consider us Jews, because when we go to Israel, you're still demanding that we must, quote-unquote, reconvert. Who said we converted in the first place? Who said, what right have European Jews, who don't belong there either, have a right to tell us and to carry us to a shameful...
European Jews who don't have
any more than we do. Because the Russian Jews come, many of them not circumcised, many of them never have a bar mitzvah, and we had to go, nobody asked them to reconvert. We had to go there, and a fast called circumcision, and I wanted to use a Hebrew word, but at the moment. And we're supposed to go through all that. Next thing, Rabbi, how come my uncle, Tamaras Emmanuel, came here in 1935 to raise money when Italy invaded Ethiopia? We were 5 million. When we left, we were 50,000. The Jewish community in America refused, denied that we existed. Up to now in Israel, you have two grand rabbis at least, the Sephardic grand rabbi and the Ashkenazi grand rabbi, the European grand rabbi, that refused to recognize that we're even Jews. Only the Sephardic grand rabbi started with Obadiah Yosef when he was the chief rabbi. Now let's go back. So that it's a farce about Israel telling us to come there for whatever the reason. In that, Israel to this day, from 1947, has in the Knesset a petition for the acceptance of Jews from Ethiopia, the right to return. To this day, it has not been approved. It is still being tabled every year now. So that you try to show the liberality of white American Jews when it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist at all. Because if you're saying that you're bringing us back, then we should go back as Jews, not as something that you're going to make us over there. Who give you the authority to say who is a Jew and who isn't a Jew. You talk about my desire for the political aristocracy, my political sense. Well, it was obvious that no one questions European Jews. Am I to believe that European Jews don't have a white politics here? When blacks move into the a Jewish neighborhood, white Jewish neighborhood, doesn't the white Jew move like the white Christian? I mean, doesn't the white Jew have white flight to the suburb? No. So, as a Jew, are you saying that I should behave as a Jew, period, in the United States, that means white Jew, in the United States, and run from the blacks? When I come here, my acceptance in Judaism isn't the same as when you come. When you come, if you came as a white Jew, and the white Jew, and you deal with whites. Now, I'm a black Jew, isolated from Judaism by virtue of that because of my blackness. When I go into a synagogue, most synagogue I go into, the first thing they tell me, and I have to have a Jew, when you become Jew, did your parents convert? When? You don't have a white person walk into the synagogue and say that. Go back about the Jews learning the Hammurabi Code. When you talk about Hammurabi Code, you're talking about 2000 BC, just the other day, historically speaking. The concept of one God didn't come from Moses nor Hammurabi. Akhenaten preached one God before Moses was born. The Aaron and about their being African. If you're born in America, you are an American Jew, wouldn't you say? Now, where was Aaron born? Where was Moses born? And Sarah, Aaron's sister, and all of them, Miriam. Where were all of this supposed to be happening? Before the Jews come in contact again as a group. Not Moses, not Abraham alone and his little family. From Abraham and excluding Joseph. From then on, according to Torah, for approximately 400 years, everything the Jews learned was in Egypt. Everything. Because from the time of Joseph, Exodus, Genesis ends. And Moses died. And there came a time when Joseph died. Because of this bad period that came, who knew not Joseph. From then on, we have to hear about the plight of the Jewish people and so forth. But before that, by the time of Potiphar, all the way down to the Exodus, isn't it everything the Jew learned was in there? It was no Hammurabi Code. And I says the basic foundation of Judaism, one God and all that, came out of Africa. Egypt is still there, not in the Middle East.
Time for another break. We will continue with our discussion, our modest discussion, right after this. Press on. Let's, please. A number of points. Again, we're into this historical selectivity, and at the risk of sounding as if I'm pushing Mesopotamia today, the reality is, of course, that both the archaeological and the literary evidence of such areas as Ebla and others clearly illustrate that a proto-monotheism existed in the Mesopotamian area centuries and centuries before the Hebrews. Some scholars have even attempted to identify one of the Mesopotamian names of this god as Eloah, and in that way try to learn from it the Hebrew term Elohim. And I merely identify this as one scholarly view. Again, I wouldn't want to deny for a moment that Egypt is part of the cultural mix, and therefore Africa, as you would want to make the political point. But to selectively ignore all other historical factors to then be able to make a political point is not to be dismissed as a cry of anti-Semitism when it's raised, but is to be called for inaccuracy in the historical record. And one has an absolute right to do that when that inaccuracy then feeds it to contemporary politics. But if I would like, but if I could respond to the Ethiopian issue.
No, wait, I got to answer you that point first. Then you could go to the Ethiopian issue because that's a big issue too. Mm-hmm. You try to throw over that anti-Semitism slipping right there. Mm-hmm. Even when a Jew disagrees with a Jew, it becomes anti-Semitic. By the way, I hope that you would agree that the common statement in America among Jews is that if your mother is Jewish, then you're Jewish. you agree to that?
According to Jewish law.
Okay. And if I make it better, if your father is Jewish and your mother is Jewish, then you're also Jewish.
Excuse me, one's father has nothing to do with his status as
I added that for extra measure.
Right, but that has no
I didn't say it does. I didn't say it does. Don't be peculiar. I mean, we're dealing with the issue. I said, well, okay, my mother is, and so that makes me yes. That makes me.
Yes.
Okay, fine. So then to call me anti-Semitic as a Jew practicing, went through all the rituals like the lady who probably did on yourself, then it would mean that I strongly disagree with the teachings that what you just stated, for example. Then I said to you, using the Torah itself, on the statement of the Torah that Abraham came from the city of Ur in the nation of Chaldea, which was at the time, since we're using by history, ruled by Africans, a joint army that went all the way to India. Now you said scholars. There's only one scholar that made that remark that I know of, and that's the one from the Stern Institute over there on Lexington Avenue. Now, secondly, there may be continuation of those scholars coming out of European context. What you fail to understand, Rabbi, is that European Jews are Europeans and think as Europeans and act as Europeans. African Jews, on the other hand, are being asked not to act as Africans and an African Jewish scholar, African scholarship. And last you're telling me with the scholars. Now let me go.
All right. Are you finished addressing his
No, the
point?
last part.
You got more? All right.
Last part of his point. The period of time in which we're speaking, and unfortunately Torah doesn't give dates, but the period of time in which we're talking about Avram or Abraham isn't born until around 1775 BCE, before the Christian era. That would put him around the 13th century, 13th dynasty, Egyptian 13th dynasty, Ethiopian 13th, the dynasty of the Nile Valley as a whole, because it's not only Egypt. Egypt is the zenith of a culture that goes way back, because the ancient Egyptians themselves said, we came from the beginning of the Nile where God happy dwell. All of those things. For instance, look, Rabbi, the myth that the Jews built the pyramids. You know that's a myth. Yet it's taught, probably you say it yourself, Koch gets up there and he goes and stands up on the pyramid. Bacon gets up there. And you know pretty well that the last pyramid was built before the birth of the first Jew, Abraham. Now, if I say that, I'll be anti-Semitic.
All right. In the interest of fairness, Dr. Ben, let's hear what Rabbi Seltzer has to say.
What's disturbing is simply the level of misunderstanding of what we're saying is that the scholarly view that I identified and which you then identified as a Stern College view. Stern College is part of Yeshiva University, an Orthodox institution. My background is in the Reform movement. I assure you that much of what I've suggested in terms of biblical scholarship would be totally rejected and considered unacceptable by the Orthodox community as representing non-rabbinic analysis of Torah. Therefore, to dismiss my remarks as being represented by Stern College raises the question of what kind of comprehension we have here of scholarship and indeed the pluralism within the Jewish community. And that leads me to the point I want to make.
Good point.
In the transcripts and in your remarks now, there's a tendency to speak of all Jews in the broadest context, so that you began with the Ethiopian issue by speaking about Israelis, then switched to white American Jews, and as I listened to you, I heard a constant tendency to put everything in the category of white, European versus black, Sephardic, Oriental. And again, I ask myself, the question, the state of Israel, which has a population today which is 60% Sephardic, non-European,
who are at the bottom of the social ladder.
Please, I listen to you. With a population which is 60% non-European, a population coming from the Middle East and the Oriental countries, it is certainly a political charge, which we hear constantly and is used constantly, that Israel is a white European colonialist bastion in the middle of an Arab third world part of the world. But the reality is that Israel today increasingly takes on the Levantine quality of the area in which it's in, precisely because of the population. Side point, but let me proceed.
Let me answer that and then you proceed.
Sir,
you don't run the program.
Can I answer him? No.
Let me interject. Let me interject. Let me give you 1 minute to press your point forward, and then Dr. Ben can. I must say that the time is evaporating.
Fine.
And that is my concern.
So then it's necessary to proceed.
1 minute.
Well, I shall try 1 minute. Again, this attempt to say that only black Jews experience difficulty in Israel. There are a number of, frankly, inaccuracies in this. When Soviet Jews began to come to Israel, there was precisely the same kind of questioning raised by the rabbinate. Since the rabbinic establishment and authorities were in disarray in the Soviet Union, were indeed these people who were coming Jews under Orthodox law. It caused political problems. Ultimately, it was worked out as the issue with the Ethiopians is a problem, will be worked out. To characterize this on a racial basis is totally unworthy of what is indeed going on today in Israel.
Dr. Ben?
He speaks of the multiracial characteristic of Israel, but he didn't say that the multiracial characteristic isn't visible in the control in Israel. Israel is controlled by a European American, and British factor of white Judaism. He doesn't want me to deal with this reality. I've been there umpteen times.
Is that true, Rabbi Tolman?
I would give you two quick answers to that. That historically, yes, because of the nature of the earlier immigration. At this point in time, given the past election results in which Likud, which was heavily representative of the Sephardic community, and Labor, which has its base in the European community, ended up in essential parity. The reality is that power is increasingly shifting from total European control to indeed what is considered a parity between the two communities.
Well, it would seem to be a simple question, Rabbi Seltzer. Do Jews who are European or white control Israel, or do Jews who are African control Israel?
No, it's not that simple, because we're dealing with, no, not at all, because we're dealing with a question of process. And the question of process simply indicates that the initial migration of population out of which the state of Israel was established was European. The governmental structures were created by these people. Immediately after the creation of the state, over 500,000 Sephardic Jews from the Middle East, from North Africa, were brought into the state while it was involved in a fight for independence. These people took the obvious number of years to be able to function effectively on all levels of government, in all levels of Israeli society. Time is a necessary factor in life, but as of this point today, one can say without any hesitation that the non-European Sephardic community wields tremendous power in the state of Israel today.
Who is the dominant power?
Who is a dominant power? Again, I would indicate that by the last election, in which both Likud and Labor ended up in what is essentially a dead heat, one can learn from this that there is no one group in power anymore.
Dr. Ben?
The rabbi is saying to me that if I went to Israel or you went to Israel, that most of the people in government, the ambassadors traveling all over, are not European American and British Jews? Am I to believe that that's what he's saying, that there's an equal division of power? I can't think that the rabbi will stay there and say this and give this kind of a evasive answer to the question. The European and European American and British Jews still dominate the politics of Israel, still dominate the economy of Israel. And is he saying to me that these people are now welcome? My point to him is, regardless of what rabbis may have said, did they demand that the Jews from Russia go through a new halakha? Do they reconversion? Do they demand a brisk? A circumcision?
Such were the demands. Such were exactly the demands.
Was it carried through?
And just as, and the parallel is a very important one, just as politically the intent of the Orthodox, let me finish please, just as politically the intent of the Orthodox rabbinic establishment could not be considered acceptable, and these demands were ultimately dropped with Soviet Jews, so one finds that as the Ethiopian Jewish community grows, the rabbinate itself has been forced to back down And I think it is a very clear statement that most Israeli opinion would accept.
We're out of time for this segment.
That is not true because up to now.
Wait a minute now. I got to cut for a commercial break.
All right.
I know you're hot, both hot. Hot program. Hey, this is the last segment you can't run over, and I'm going to chop you if you do. We can't resolve your philosophical, your political, your historical, your ideological differences clearly this hour. But maybe we can address ourselves to tone and intent. Obviously, the letter that was written by the ADL objects to the tone and suggests that there may be some premeditated, sinister, injurious intent to Dr. Ben's remark for political reasons. And perhaps you can clarify that, and perhaps Dr. Ben can rebut and answer, and maybe perhaps we can clarify and heal this rift.
As we read the transcript and as we discussed today, we see much in your remarks that is reflected in third world political statements in the UN and other forums. The fact that you are indeed Jewish in no way changes the content of these remarks and the political context in which we see them. From our point of view, as Ethiopians were starving and are starving, Israel was the only country that offered the kind of aid to physically bring black Ethiopians out. And indeed, it's the only example of a nation of Caucasians, to use the term that appears frequently here, of bringing in blacks in dignity as citizens. To begin to turn it around says to us we begin to hear the same kind of third world, radical, political kind of rhetoric, which is directed towards the United Nations, towards Israel and the United Nations, which we hear in so many other forums. This is what we respond to, this willingness to identify Jews and Judaism with colonialism, whites, repression, and having read some of your other material in addition to this, I must say that it's a theme that strikes me as pervasive and something that we find unacceptable in a public forum.
All right. Number one, you spoke very much about generalized statement. You just said that the Ethiopians are starving and you bring it out. Isn't it the fact that you're talking about only Ethiopia has about 40 million people. You're talking about 5 miles from the border with Sudan in south, where the starvation situation developed. Isn't it also a fact that the Palestinians, the Ethiopians would better Israel? Our people were not particularly at that spot. Isn't it a fact that the same United Nations you call on found that many of our community was ready to bring people out? And you talk about the only nation to help. Isn't it also a fact that there are almost every nation in the world in Ethiopia giving assistance to people who are hungry on the northern borders of Ethiopia?
Are you suggesting that it would have been better for Israel
let me go ahead.
to, in no sense, save black lives?
You talk about this. No. If Israel had was saving us for the reason that you indicated or tried to indicate, yes. Well, how is it that all of a sudden that we are saved, but we wind up in the army and we're dying from starvation? We wind up in people's house cleaning, and Falasha never let their women. This is one thing against our principle, to work as domestic in anybody's house. We're doing that now. Why didn't you mention the 4 Falashas last 2-3 weeks ago that committed suicide over this in Israel? Why didn't you mention the protest meeting in Israel? Why didn't you mention the dialogue between Israel and Ethiopia, that the Falashas women they want to go back to Ethiopia, and there's a dialogue about and the Ethiopian government say, you took them, bring them back?
So the saving of lives by the state of Israel of Jews is another example of racism, according to you.
If you could say it that way, okay. But if you get cheap labor, you don't have to worry about the lives.
That is the purpose at which the state of Israel brought the Ethiopian community for cheap labor. That is unworthy of a public state.
Okay, it is. But when we were dying from Mussolini extermination, it is typical of the behavior of European American Jews. You don't want me to say that. Rabbi, you probably live in a racist society yourself. I couldn't probably walk any night. You don't want me
Has
to deal with
Israel not initiated the Operation Moses, I suspect you would have been among the first who would have said, you see how racist the state of Israel is for not responding to the plight of Jews even though they're black.
It's the biggest mistake.
But now you
Rabbi,
say that even though they're black, it's a racist response.
The courtesy of listening.
It's outrageous.
I listen to you.
It's absolutely
You don't think
outrageous.
that I feel that you're outrageous? Now, my point is this, that a nation that said we don't exist, you know, with the contrition of Israel, the thousands upon thousands of Israelis leaving Israel constantly, you need to replenish that community. You have an Arab situation, and don't deal with me about the third world, because I'm not a member of the third world, I'm a member of the first world. You know, Zanzibar's boys, it was long before Adam and Eve, and it's found in Africa. Lucy is found in Ethiopia, and it's 3.2 million years. You see, you want me to go along with a dialogue that suits you as a European Jew, but doesn't suit me as an African Jew. And you assume that my African Jew is to supersede my Africanness. No way, Rabbi, because you want it both ways. You want to be a European Jew, benefiting from being a European, benefiting from being a Jew, and that I sat by and listen to it, and then call it anti-Semitic.
You may have difficulty, but the record will show that I sit here as an American Jew.
That's right.
That will be my
And
definition.
I as an African
How
Jew.
you choose to define me in whatever racial or political terms you have the need is your business. But I reject it totally.
I got to cut you. I thank you both for expressing your opinions so openly.
Black Power. Dr. Ben against Arthur Seltzer, beating the silly Jew up. You talking in circles. Hold on for a minute. Back open real quick. Dr. Ben, so family, I got the lines open real quick, so just if anybody got any comments, like I said, we giving we're doing a memorial, the memory to Dr. Ben tonight, being the anniversary of her return to the ancestral realm.
Black power, man. Black power to the family.
Black power, brother John. Black power.
Yes, it's good to hear the king, man, beating him upside the head, man.
Yeah, we might well.
I kind of came in late, so we got to hear about the last 30 minutes, but man, you feel me? It was outnumbered heat.
Yeah, I got one. I got some fire for the people. It's the Black Man Wake Up. You know what I'm saying? This is Dr. Ben night. You know, we like to respect our elders here. So we're gonna let the elders speak for itself. You know what I mean?
I say.
Let's pull this.
It's good to see, man. You know, any time my elders set the tone, man, for how you debate. You go into a debate or argument with these crackers, man. You know what I'm saying? Never to come in from a weak standpoint. All the stories I hear, Dr. Ben, he was always, I always hear, you know what I'm saying, like a straightforward, you know what I'm saying, don't play no game, no chase. You see what I'm saying? And to see that he was like that with the niggas and was like that with them crackers to say, like, shit, he ain't pulled no punches with nobody. That just feel good to see. You know, a lot of motherfuckers have changed their tone.
Yeah, we're talking to the white boy. Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Start calling the white boy his brother and shit.
Yeah. But yeah, that was good to hear. So, Dr. Ben definitely, he made sure he maintained that same, that proper attitude when dealing with that beast. The same attitude that he reflected to us, that how he felt about him, he dealt with him the same way.
Yep.
So they was
separate and unequal, man.
So with that being said, fellas, we're going to jump into Black Man Wake Up by Dr. To Dr.Ben. So, we'll do our lines and we're going to get to it.
I would like to first express my appreciation for your invitation. It took me 50 years to get to Tuskegee. 50 years ago, at age 16, I applied for entrance to Tuskegee. My application was accepted, but the immigration laws of the United States of America were such, and I don't think they have changed much, that I couldn't get here. I remembered that such had happened to a man before me by the name of Marcus Messiah Garvey. He was invited by Booker T. Washington. I don't know if you know about him. I heard you don't have a Booker T. Washington Day. Unusual. But anyhow, probably better thoughts may come about and there will be a Booker T. Washington Day at Tuskegee. But anyhow, Marcus Messiah Garvey was invited by Booker T. Washington to come to the United States. The facts are that red tape in the Immigration Department, Garvey arrived 6 months subsequent to the death of the great Booker T. Washington. So, taking 50 years to get here, nevertheless, I got here. I do not know if I would have taken the course of action in my life that I have now taken. However, I was lucky enough to slip through an engineering course and graduate in a few more courses, and here I am. Within the context of my education, if you could call it that, I would prefer to call it the course of my indoctrination, my training, which started in Ethiopia, East Africa, and continued in Brazil, Cuba, Puerto Rico, the United States Virgin Islands, England, and Spain. Been around a few places. And in all of these places that I've been, I never once received an education in the history of African people. Yet I thought that I've educated myself down through those period of time. And it is because of that self-education in those things which meant most to me as an African person that I decided at no time would I stand still in these halls of indoctrination and not rebel with the necessary documentation of the lies that are being taught in these halls. And so I may be saying things that may hurt many of you, if not most of you, because some of the lies have become your dear frame of reference. We could start with the Greeks. I hope you of fraternities and sororities don't get too bothered about it, since the Greeks want too much anyhow. But we can start with that, Because there is where our institutions of learning have decided to start civilization. Yet the Greeks are only here from at least 1,000 before the Common Era, or before the Christian era, as you would prefer to say. Let us just, for example, cite one. And that particular person would be Hippocrates. And I'm sure that you heard of Hippocrates. And when you consider that Hippocrates wasn't born until 333 BC, or before the Common Era, yet in your education you were told that Hippocrates is the father of medicine. That's a lie. There's no way that I can say about it other than it's a lie. A lie is a lie, whether it's in the university or in the church. How could Hippocrates be the father of medicine when the first time you see him, he is in Egypt learning medicine from Africans? There are numerous papyri, medical papyri on medicine. The nearest to Hippocrates is at least 1,300 years before he was born. For example, we have what is known as the Hetus papyrus, the Ebers papyrus, and now the so-called Rockefeller papyrus, the Edwin C. Smith papyrus. All of these papyri go back to as early as 3100 BC. The man who Hippocrates took an oath that he would practice medicine according to this man, this African, whom the Greeks call Aesculapius, in the Hippocratic Oath, a man by the name of Imhotep, died. He practiced medicine and died 2,500 years before the birth of Hippocrates. And you are telling me that the medical school and the pre-medical historians don't know this? They don't know it because, unfortunately, Imhotep had a high visibility like myself, otherwise called black. They don't know that the Ebers papyrus by Hatshepsut, dealing with Planned Parenthood, I said Planned Parenthood, 1,550 years before the birth of Jesus the Christ. Out there, when every medical journal in 1961 published copies of the Ebers papyrus. And we could go on with the papyri with respect to all kinds of diseases that the Africans had produced, both in Egypt and Ethiopia and Sudan and a place then called Puanit, now called Somalia. But that would be satisfactory, but let us take the kind of education that we do have. We are in a chapel, and we have been told about an immaculate conception and virgin birth. We have been told about the beginning of the world with Adam and Eve. We have been told about a man by the name of Cain who slew his brother Abel. And we've been told that all of these things only happen once. And they go back to the Old Testament, or otherwise called the Torah, or the Pentateuch, or the Chumash. Those are names for what you call the Old Testament. But we have never been told that they are only copies of stories that predated them by thousands of years. Let's just them one by one. I heard some hymns and everything already. Oh yes, you have been told a lot of lies. No other way to talk about it. research must know their lives. That is providing that they have never gone to Egypt or to Ethiopia or to Sudan to see the living proof. The writings on the tombs, the writings in the pyramid, what is called the pyramid text and the Carson text. That is providing that they have not seen the holy scriptures of the Africans of the Nile Valley, otherwise called the Egyptian Book of the Dead, or as Budge called it in his translation of the hieratic writings, or the Egyptian Book of the Coming Forth by Day and by Night. In the temple of Setaiwan, for example, at a place called Abydos, not only is there the writings of an immaculate conception 4,000 years before the story of Mary, but it's there in picture form. Are we to say that the theologians of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam have never once taken a trip to Egypt, from whence these things were taken? In that same temple, you see a story of how Typhon murdered his brother Osiris 2,000 years before the Jewish story of Cain and Abel. And we are told that an African from Egypt by the name of Moses, born in the city of Goshen, that's still Egypt. Egypt is in Africa, by the way, the last time I saw it in January. You heard of a place called Middle East. I don't know of any place called Middle East. That's political jingoism. But we can find that there was no Moses on Mount Horeb in the Sinai to receive any 10 commandments that had not been given before or written before in Egypt, because you could go in the book of the Coming Forth by Day and by Night, the Book of the Dead, and see in what is called the Osirian drama, not only those 10, but 32 more, a total of 42, which you can also go in the temple of Ramesses VI, in the Valley of the Kings, across what is today called Luxor. And in that tomb, you would see the 42 listed commandments, or otherwise negative confession, 2,000 years before the birth of Moses. But they told you that Moses was taught. He was an Egyptian, taught in school in Egypt, and became a priest in the system. Could you have been born in the United States of America, went to kindergarten, then elementary school, junior high school, and never heard of the United States Constitution? It was equally impossible for Moses to have born in Egypt, go to school in Egypt, study an Egyptian system, worship God Amun-Ra, and never once heard of the 42 negative confession, which have in it, thou shalt not kill. I have not killed man nor woman. I have not made like that bushel. I have not this. Moses himself is charged with murder. His brother Aaron is charged with theft. 40 years before they reached Mount Sinai, then somebody had a law against theft and against murder before he reached Mount Sinai. Where did he get it? But you weren't taught anything about this. All of this information have been suppressed at a place called the Council of Jamia and the Council of Nicene in 325 AD, when Constantine, the Roman emperor, conquered North Africa, took over the role of the Christian church, which started in Alexandria with Pantheus and Photius, not in Rome. But this too you have not been taught. You have not been taught that the three people who died first in the name of Jesus the Christ were three African women: Felicita, Nymphano, and Perpetua. Yet you you know everything. You're born again. You know it all. You can't be blamed for it. Even your teachers may not be able to be blamed for this because one can't teach what one doesn't know, or one have not learned, or one have not experienced, because there is no interest for people to go to Egypt to see anything, but to go to the Holy Land. That's why Jesse is tied and had to get on his knees and pray and beg forgiveness. He was scared he wouldn't be able to get back in the Holy Land for saying what was right. But there's more than that. Because you have been told that unless Europeans teach you, you haven't been taught. But who told you that the first university built in all of Europe was built by Africans called Moors? At the university, what is called the University of Salamanca in Spain. Check it out. Europe's first university. Not only the stones were put together like the stones in most of the building and the bricks in most of the building here. I'm not talking about that aspect of only the building. I'm talking about the educational system is nothing but a copy of the University of Gene, D-J-E-N-N-E, of ancient Ghana, which was burnt down and rebuilt as the University of Sankore in the city of Timbuktu, which the French later called Timbuktu. Then carried, as the Africans called Moors, conquered Iberia, now Spain and Portugal and southern France, and established in there the university system. And as I said before, it was not the first. The earliest of the Greeks were trained in a place called the subordinate lodge of Croton and Delphi. Subordinate lodges of the Grand Lodge in a place called Waset, which the Greeks later changed to Thebes or Thebes. The current Arabs changed it to Luxor. But did you get that in Greek philosophy? Did you get it in Greek history or European history? None whatsoever. And how did you get Hannibal Barca and his father Hasdrubal Barca and his brother and his father, rather, Hamilcar, his brother Hasdrubal? How did you receive it in the educational system? How did the textbook show it? It showed it as they were not Africans. What they said is some Phoenicians came from Phoenicia, and Carthage, they later called Carthage, was in fact a Phoenician country. 80 people came from Phoenicia with a woman named Elisa, which Virgil called Dido or Dido in his little play about it. And those 80 changed all the Africans into Phoenicians. And thus we are taught that the Africans of Carthage were in fact Caucasians. It's all right when they taught me in school in Puerto Rico, I didn't know any difference. I was born in Ethiopia, grew up in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, Cuba and Brazil. So when they were teaching me that at the University of Puerto Rico, I knew no difference, and so it went down all right. But I accidentally went to Morocco. Accidentally. And find that what I had been taught in school was nothing but a pack of lies. Because I then went into the temple, I then went into the museum and found that it was totally different, but then I went on to Italy, in the Medici Museum. Museum of Alessandro de Medici, only to find that Alessandro was an African born in Italy. And no one had told me up to then that there were Roman emperors from Africa, such as Honorius and Septimus Severus and his son Caracalla. had taken time to explain to me anything about the Greeks coming to Egypt and to Nubia and to Ethiopia, depending on who they were, to receive their earliest education, those who had not gone to a little colony, a little enclave in what was then called Lebus, now called Libya, to receive their first glimpse into education taught by Africans. Well, having gone the route of civil engineering and with a bachelor's and then master's in architectural engineering, you would think that I should be satisfied at that point. But I couldn't be satisfied because the fire had burnt. You see, I was the admirer of two particular people at that time. One called Booker T. Washington, one called Marcus Garvey. In the reverse, Garvey first and then Washington. Garvey because in my household, Garvey was the word next to the deity. The relationship between Garvey and Booker T had become so close that I too followed the teachings and philosophical concept of the late Honorable Booker T. Washington. But within that philosophy was something else both men always taught: the integrity of the individual. And the integrity of the individual refused, in my case, to accept lies, such as Benny Goodman is the king of swing, and Duke Ellington must have been the emperor of swing. Chick Webb, having taught Gene Krupa, I was told that Gene Krupa is the best on his drum, but he went to Chick Webb to get to be the best on the drum. I don't know if you know Chick Webb, you know Ella Fitzgerald. Chick taught her. I just throw that in to show you that the lie doesn't stop in ancient time. It continues up to today as truth. So in my further examination, I was dealing with 3.14. All of you here in engineering knows what it's supposed to symbolize. They say it's 5. And I was taught that it came from the Greeks. And you know, I believed it. What else could I do? The teacher told me. And then when I went to Ethiopia and to Egypt and to Nubia, in the ancient records of the ancient Africans of the Nile Valley Africans, there was pie being used 2,000 years before there was such a place as Greece. The first writer of Greece that brought Greece into civilization, because they said the demarcation between uncivilized and civilized has to do with the time when you start writing history, they call it, prehistoric and historic. Homer is the Greek first writer. And Homer said that even the concept of God, Zeus and Apollo, came from Ethiopia. So when you get in the Greek fraternities and sororities, just remember what Homer said. You must have dealt with the Iliad and the Odyssey by now. But again, I understand. You see, you have been taught by Alex Haley and others that your history started in the slave trade. But they don't even tell you how the slave trade started. They blame you for enslaving yourself. They say your ancestors sold you out. Nice statement. So I asked the guy, what country, what was the name of the king? Oh, don't worry about that, they sold you out. As if I don't know that the slave trade started with the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church by the name of Martin V. And Reverend Bartholomew de las Casas on the island of Hispaniola now called Haiti and Santo Domingo. You see, nobody told you it's time to get sorry, to feel bad. When some Haitians were being slaughtered on the coast of Florida. That's what it is. If you send a people back to sea on the condition where they were, that's genocide. But you see, you didn't feel anything because you weren't taught to realize that the Haitians are your brothers and sisters, because you don't know that the first Africans to be brought in slavery was not taken from Africa, but from Spain and carried to Haiti, then called Hispaniola, in 1506, under the aegis of the Pope of the Roman Church and Bartolomé de las Casas. But how did you get in Spain? That was 1506. But you went into Spain, which was then called Iberia, Spain and Portugal and southern France, as conqueror yourself in 711, under the leadership of Tariq, for whom the Rock of Gibraltar is now named Gibraltariq. Nothing in your education, because there's nothing in your textbooks about any of this. So you have to go to Spain. Luckily, at the University of Barcelona, where I attended for 2 years, here are these documents, and I had never known anything about them. I hadn't known that the Africans called Moors had ruled Spain from 711 until 1485. The last of them losing power at a place called Granada. I was always wondering, why is it that 90% of all the songs coming out of Spain was singing to La Morena, the black woman? So how come in this country, 90% of all the songs, the records, the tape, everything is La Morena this and La Morena that? It is when I went there I found out La Morena raised hell in Spain. She's still raising hell in Montgomery, Alabama, and in Tuskegee, Alabama, and in Tuskegee Institute. I could look around and see her. Of course, the first one of you threw a good baseball and a good basketball, forget that she could raise hell. You don't want her for a wife anymore. You hit the numbers, you don't want her for a wife. Some of you forget you look like your mama. Sorry, fellas. Try one, it may be good for your health. But we must go back and ask ourselves, why is this so? And I said to the students today at the high school, even the paper you write on shows your heritage and your history. It was in Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan that the first papyrus paper was created, not rice paper in China. Just as it was in Egypt that engineering, Sesostris II, you are engineers, many of you, Sesostris II, changed the flow of the Nile. That S-turn you see there was placed there by African engineers in 2250 BC. There was no Jesus yet. No Adam and Eve story yet. Because that came out of the Sanhedrin in 700 BC, just yesterday. When the African engineers was changing the flow of the Nile. Hydrographic engineering, there was no Adam, no Eve yet. No Jehovah. Because Abraham, the first Jew that brought out the concept of a Jehovah, wasn't even born. The Africans had already worshipped Ptah, P-T-A-H. Amin-Ra. You still say Amin at the end of each prayer. And they told you it means so be it. That's a lie. Amin was the god of the north. When Scorpio, the pharaoh, headed the north and Egypt was divided in Ra. And Ra, Mena, or Nama, was the king of the south, and his god was Ra. The conquest of Mena over Scorpion allowed Mena to join God Amen with God Ra and call Amen Ra. Thousands of years before there was a Jehovah, Jesus, or Allah. Muhammad ibn Abdullah wasn't born until 570 of the Christian era. Pontius and Boetius that started Christianity wasn't born until 50 AD, according to the story. And Abraham, who started the concept of a God named Jehovah, and Adam and Eve's story wasn't born until 1760 BC. The Africans of Egypt and Ethiopia and Nubia were already in their 13th dynastic period. No different than the lie they told us that the Jews built the pyramids. Which one? The little one in their bathtub? There are 72 pyramids throughout Egypt. The first one was designed, engineered, and built by the multi-genius, first one known in the world, Imhotep. That was the third dynasty. The last one was the sixth dynasty, and the first Jew wasn't born until the 13th dynasty. You can't build a pyramid before you're born. But the myth and the lies continue. Now they're even making people from outer space build the pyramids from the top down. Those of you here engineering know how to build it from the top down. They took the first stone with some skyhook and connected it to the clouds passing by. I'm not supposed to speak about these things. Oh, I'm supposed to be glad somebody give me a piece of goat skin with a thing on it that said PhD. Twice. And I'm supposed to be so good. I got one of these goat skin. PhD, all in Latin. Feel good, ain't it? Different person. My mother isn't my mother anymore. My father isn't my father anymore. Black folks are not related to me anymore. I'm Greek, Dutch, Japanese, whatever else. I am rainbow coalition now. I don't talk to my cousin anymore. They can't sit at my table at the college anymore because I'm Abba Dabba Labba Labba fraternity. Oh, the things we go through. All to keep up on the Pan-African concept. You know, when I heard that in, I think it was Selma, Alabama, or Montgomery, that 6 little black girls were blown up. I heard you vote for the guy the other day. Blown up in a little temple, a little Baptist temple. Tears ran down my eyes. Because my girls, I got 9, were blown up. When they were blown up. When they were blown up, mine. It was my children blew up. How could I sit in my living room in New York and felt comfortable knowing? People don't want me to feel. If you kill one European Jew in Ushkush because he is Jewish, the whole white Jewish community getting armed. But if you kill umpteen black, I am not supposed to say anything, otherwise I'm being racist. You see, they didn't tell you that they're black people who are Jews. So you say black and Jews are going to have a conference. Couldn't be black Jews too? Or you never heard of the Falashas, the Ethiopian Jews? I'm one. I know that I don't look Jewish, but they don't look Jewish to me either. But this, you see, is rough stuff. hear or deal with. Tomorrow there's going to be a question and answer period, and all who don't agree with it could ask their question and make their comment. They shouldn't wait till tomorrow when I'm gone and sneakily run and tell you, I knew better. They are called the Falashas, but you didn't hear anyone saying anything in America when the Italian fascists were exterminating the Falashas. Nobody said anything. And it was the forerunner to what Hitler was to come and do next. But there was no rallying cry about my people. We were 5 million when Hitler arrived, Mussolini arrived. With the help of the Pope, Pius XI, I think it was. When the Italians left, we were 50,000. But no cry. Isn't it strange that when you write and when you are taught, you hear only about a Holocaust? One. What happened to your Holocaust that's still going on? What happened to the 50 million Africans, your brothers and sisters, that were murdered in Munamatapa, now called South Africa, under Cecil John Rhodes? Do you know that black folks take scholarship in honor of John Rhodes, Cecil John Rhodes? Because you don't know. Nobody told you who Rhodes was. Rhodes made Hitler look like a playboy. You don't know about the Holocaust with Frederick Lugard and Dr. Jameson in what is today called Nigeria, with Goldie and others when they took over the colony. You don't know about the Holocaust with Leopold II, the Vanderbilts and the Pews and the others, the Rockefellers and so forth, when they took over what was called Manicongo in those days and changed it to the Congo Free State. How many millions? 22 million? Were exterminated. African women pregnant were placed in the middle of roads, and 3 limbs put to both arms, and cut with the horses and split them open, and the babies fell out as a punishment that the men would see it. These are records. They themselves wrote, not realizing that Africans will come later to revenge these causes. But that isn't mentioned as Holocaust in any of your textbooks, because it was only Africans being exterminated. I don't expect enemies to say this, but I do expect that when you write and when you do your research that you use the appropriate term, genocide, Holocaust, wherever it applies. In Tasmania, an island off Australia, every last African was murdered. There isn't one left. And you don't call it a Holocaust. You don't cry about it. You don't get up any day complaining. Nobody comes to you and asks you, but you cry for everybody else's Holocaust. Because you weren't taught that these people had anything at all to do with you. You forget that the slave boat did not come from Africa to America. It came from Africa to the Caribbean, from the Caribbean to America. The first boat that brought Africans here were not from Africa, but from Barbados. First that came to Virginia in 1619 in Jamestown. You weren't told that there's any connection. As a matter of fact, the people from Alabama don't feel anything for the people of New Jersey, and the people of New Jersey don't feel anything for the people of Mississippi, etc., etc. We have not been taught that way. Thus, we couldn't even have with Jesse an African drive for an African people. In the midst of the drive, we had to change to rainbow. And you stood here and got on your knees and begged for a holiday for Dr. King. You disgraced Dr. King. The enemy never award his foe with a holiday. The Italians got a day for a man that got lost, couldn't find his way. Columbus Day. They didn't go to anybody for the holiday. The Irish got a day for men that killed snakes in Ireland. They didn't go to anybody for holiday. The Poles got a day for Pulaski. They didn't go and beg a day. Why didn't you take a day? You had to go beg for even a day to worship a great man. But you fail to understand that King did not operate alone. There was a man at the same time named Malcolm X. And somebody told you that Malcolm X preached violence. How the hell do you think you got it? By non-violence? How do you think you got lynched? How do you think King died? By a bullet like Malcolm X. Malcolm left a woman named Betty with 6 daughters, 2 in her stomach when he died. They've never seen their dad. King left a woman with 3 children too. What is it about one struggling for you that isn't about the other struggling for you? You let people decide for you who fights for you. What made Malcolm less a fighter for you than King? They both died fighting in the best way they knew for their people. None worse or none better than the other. But worst of all, you have not one day cried for Rosa Parks. That sister started all. Just give them black sisters a chance. They will show us brothers the way. Because you see, they know that when the Africans were built, made their first calendar in 10,000 BC, 10,000 BC, called the stellar calendar, and revised that in 4100 BC, the so-called pre-dynastic era. Where was Greece? Where was Etrusca that later became Rome? They don't tell you about this, do they? They don't tell you anything about this aspect of the African, because it's not slavery. It doesn't deal with Amos and Andy. It doesn't deal with Ruth and Nozzle, which they got you to believe had something to do with your history. They couldn't do this because they did not. Where were they when you were dealing with astronomy? That's the movement of the stars and the other planets related there too. And astrology, I'm not talking no nonsense about when your girlfriend planet is down in Pluto and something. That's ignorance. Downright premeditated ignorance. Even a jackass wouldn't follow that. And some of you wouldn't come out the house unless you read a horoscope. And you get courses in it in universities now. How to be a jackass. Let us get it down. When Imhotep and others established the pyramid text and the coffin text, when you go to a place called Aswan and you see how the Africans, your ancestors, dug those marble obelisks. When you go, you always they tell you in school and they read the beautiful love story about the Majahara who built his palace for his most beloved wife, Taj Mahal. They didn't stop to tell you that thousands of years before that, a pharaoh by the name of Ramesses II not only built a temple out of hewn rock bigger than this place, along with one for his most beautiful and most precious wife, Nefertara. Don't mix her up with Nefertiti. Nefertiti was the wife of Amenhotep IV, who changed his name to Akhenaten. That's the 18th dynasty. I am talking about Nefertara, the wife of Ramesses II. That is the 19th dynasty. No mention about that, because they can't tell you African men did anything good for African women, much less to mention pharaohs and queens. Yet the evidence is still there. You go to Ethiopia, the place called Lalibela, and you see the rock-hewn temples, the rock-hewn churches in the side of mountains, down in the ground, engineering thousands of years before any country existed in all of Europe. I'm not to speak about it. All I say to you is check me out. Check these things out for yourself. Go and see them, read about them, research about them. So when what happened? You say, why do I need to know it? If Dr. Martin Luther King knew what I'm talking about, he would not have gone to Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi to learn about nonviolence. He would have known that Gandhi read the work of Akhenaten to learn about stuff, and he would have gone home to his native Africa to get first-hand information. But they kept the teachings from in all the universities, even when he went to University of Massachusetts, BU rather, with Dr. Harmon and others up there. They didn't tell him about Akhenaten, because you see, they don't talk about Akhenaten because Akhenaten taught about monotheism. He died before Moses was born, preaching monotheism, the worship of the God Aten, A-T-E-N. He taught about the Trinity of God, and you could go at a temple called the Temple of Luxor and see on the wall the Trinitarian concept 3,000 years before Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. But they couldn't teach Akhenaten. They couldn't teach these things, because then you would question what is being taught to you now in theosophy, in theology, in philosophy. But the point is that I'm going to be the bad fellow when this is over. And you're going to be told that he is the Antichrist. But the funny thing is, I don't have 3 names with 6 letters each. So I can't qualify for the Antichrist. They already specified how the Antichrist would come. And I look too much like Jesus to be the Antichrist. Oh yeah! What happened to Jesus since he got blunt? When ask your professor of theology how Jesus got blunt. Ask your professor if it was not until Michelangelo was commissioned by Pope Julius II, 1509, to draw what he believed the Holy Family looked like, that he took his uncle's son, and his uncle's wife, and used them as the model, and that became Mary, Jesus, and Joseph. Up until that time, it was the black Madonna and Child, which the present Pope went back twice to his native to worship at the feet of the black Madonna and Child. The racism hadn't hit Europe yet. So it wasn't necessary to get rid of the black color of Mary, which you now say. When you don't want to say Jesus was black, you say he had no color. If he had no color, how did John the Baptist see him to baptize it? Talking about baptismal, you should go to the temples there and see baptism of the pharaohs thousands of years before Jesus. They call it purification rites. Go and see circumcision thousands of years circumcised, and that's make him a Jew. Our education, quotation mark. I think that Carter G. Woodson, and I should have mentioned this man's name long ago, said it best in his book. The title explains what I'm saying, The Miseducation of the Negro. Assuming that Carter knew at that time that Negro was wrong, but he had no choice because he was fired from Howard University by a man named Mordecai Kaplan, who was the president of the school at the time, for attempting to introduce a course in African history in a black school. That is it. But how we can be messed up, and we mess up others because we messed up. But we can't admit it because we can't be wrong. We have to always have a theory and tell the student it's a fact for all things. Like the other day I heard a woman talking, oh God, my daughter got an illegitimate child. So what happened to the child? You didn't have a law book? Illegitimate child. And I wanted to know what was that. So I went to the hospital to see what was wrong with the child. I said, did the child got a mother and a father? They had sex with a penis and a vagina? What's wrong with the child? Well, she didn't have a marriage certificate. I said, what's that have to do with child? Do you know that Jesus and that Mary and Joseph wasn't married? And that she wasn't married to the little angel either? From calling each other bastard and illegitimate. How you know you belong to your daddy? You're gambling with your mom. But you go around and then say, oh, I'm a good Christian lady, I'm a good Jewish lady, I'm a good Muslim lady, but you condemn a child for having a daddy and without a paper from City Hall. In those days, tell me, with your Adam and Eve story, the God didn't say, go to City Hall, get a paper, get married, then go out and multiply. God says in the book of Genesis, after he made a man and a woman, it's only the second time he can create one and make the other. He says, go out and get it now. Go out and multiply. That doesn't mean that you act like a pig in a basket and dropping everything you got. That doesn't say that. But it doesn't also say that if God give a woman a vagina and a man a penis, why do you think God gives them back? To use it. Better go put it in a picture frame and look at it. But this is the kind of distortion that you have been given by the same man who asked you to give him 10% of your salary. Every Saturday, every Sunday. Oh, I'm going to hell. That's no big deal. Because they said only 777,000 going to heaven. How many people in the United States of America? 220 million? If 777,000 alone going to heaven, you got as much chance hitting the grand prize in New York, in New Jersey, in California, in London, in France, as you got getting in heaven. So I'm sticking with the devil. Because since he got more followers than anybody else, you don't hear the devil having to advertise, come to church. Because he got what's going. Because you pray so much. The other day you prayed, Jesus came here in Harlem the other day with his heavenmobile. In the middle of Harlem. Coming down Lenox Avenue at 145th Street, 11 o'clock Sunday. Jesus knew he had brought all the things black people were asking for. The heavenmobile was I didn't bring enough, and it went right back. Because they were still begging, give me a fur coat, Lord. Give me a new Cadillac. Give me a European girl. Give me a job. See, people forget that the same book said, I will help those who help themselves. You pray for the exam. Pray. Don't do it. Pray. Let me know when you flunk out. There's a certain amount of praise. You say, do you pray? Yes. I pray when I get in the airplane. I pray now. I have to go to church to pray. You know what I'm praying about? Strength to beat my enemy. I don't want God to give me no TV set. I work and get that. I pray for God to hold the moon from bumping into the sun. That's all I want God to do. Stop an iceberg from falling my head in Alabama. That's a long way the iceberg got to travel. But I want the iceberg to leave Alaska. Because if the iceberg hit me in Alabama, we all dead. But I'm not going to pray for God to help me to beat my enemy. I don't do that myself. And I'm not non-violent. When my mother had me, she didn't have me non-violent. A 9-pound baby don't come out non-violent. You hit me and start praying. You pray. Because it's not natural. Because I know this. You see, when King Uri of Ethiopia in 5100 established the concept of nonviolence, he didn't say at any cost. When Akhenaten brought his cousin Semenkari and sit him on the throne of Egypt as co-regent in the 18th dynasty so that he could pay attention to nonviolence, he didn't say at any cost. Not at the destruction of his people. When Rosa Parks got up in that bus, she had no PhD, no M anything, no B anything, but she had the integrity of an African woman that she was no longer going to sit down in the back of the bus, and she was willing to die and take somebody with her. I know these are alien talks. These are alien thoughts because you believe that praying gonna change it. No way. Praying didn't change lynching because it still goes on. Instead of a Ku Klux Klan doing it, the government does it. But most of us in our academic role don't want to deal with this thing, and I can understand because it means the difference between tenure, the bank mortgage, the yacht in the basin, the Mercedes-Benz. And winding down for the question and answer period, and I hope to be a very jolly one. I'm sorry about that, but I have to teach at Malcolm King College. I teach there now voluntarily for the last 20 years. I taught a course. I've been teaching a course on Egyptology as my contribution to my community. And I don't like to miss class. But you could see why from 1942 when I started to teach to the present time, I've had to struggle. I've paid the price. I've been shot at physically for what I teach, but no one wants to check the evidence. But the hundreds of people who have gone to me to Egypt and study tours have seen. And the sad part is that so many go and see, but they dare not say a thing when they come back for the fear of losing even family. How sad that is. How sad it is that people will be angry because I say to you, have pride, wake up. I shouldn't say to you, wake up black men, I should say to you, wake up people. by us but us. And all because I have made my mind that my people are to be taught that they come out of a drop out of a sky as slaves and were slaves. And every time you see a movie from Washington, D.C. or anything, whatever the period, the only time you see us, we are slaves. I remember going to the opera. I don't go to that place unless somebody give me a ticket. Because they ain't got nothing about me to play the mouse. What the hell I want to see but I play the mouse? Little mouse running around in German. So I went to one that's supposed to be about me, about Dido, Birdie's place. This is happening in Egypt and Ethiopia, and I'm sitting down in a $22 seat. You know, I didn't buy that one. And it is about the princess of Egypt and the prince of Ethiopia, and I'm looking at the stage. And the prince is blonde. And the princess blonder yet. And I'm saying, like simple for Langston Hughes, you know I'm dummy. When will the Ethiopian and the Egyptian come? And the person who gave me the taste, stay there, I said, there. They look Greek to me. Look French, Dutch, German. The brother said, you prejudiced? I said, yeah. Behind that I am. You mean to tell me that that's a blonde Ethiopian? And that's a blonde Egyptian? But you see, you would have been satisfied. You would call it art for art's sake. Not me. It was no damn good. Because Ethiopians don't look like that. And I was going to sit down there and lie to myself that that had any value. When you had Martina Arroyo, you had Leontine Price, you had all kinds of people they could have put in that place. But the Metropolitan Opera House wasn't ready yet for Leontine Price. No Martina Arroyo or anybody else. And until they were ready, I was going to give them hell until they get ready and made them get ready. Because I'm not going to sit down any time behind, and now I don't need it to do anymore. I retired from teaching in colleges, and I wasn't doing it then. I wasn't sitting quiet then. And I'm not going to sit quiet now when I don't have to worry anyhow. Didn't worry then. To bring the truth to my people. And time doesn't permit. I have to go here, there, and everything to just show you the culmination of history. History isn't a thing of the past. Because of history, you act and react today. History is now. What happened yesterday make you act today and will make you act tomorrow. What happened to Booker T. Washington made what you are doing possible. The interaction of the people with whom Booker T. dealt with. And so it will be unbecoming you not to go forward and further the attributes of Booker T. And Dr. Carver and others. You can't fail. You can't come to this institution and nonchalantly take courses and hope to pass. You have an obligation to pass and pass well. Not only to read the books in front of you, but to read others. Certainly if you're taking engineering or science or something like that, you need a lot of time, but you can't ignore self. The understanding, the knowledge of self. You can't come through here and don't take courses in African history or African American history. You can't do it. Some of you believe because you're black you know yourself. Well, check it out. You get to European history, you must take that to graduate. 101, 201, umpteen one. But take yours at least on your own initiative. Learn who you were. Learn who you are. Learn what you must be. I say, I walk with my head in the clouds because I have no fear. I have no embarrassment of my enslavement because, you see, the shackles have been off my body, my legs, my feet, and I've removed it from the last place, my mind. And thus I am a free man. When I look in the mirror, I feel proud of what I see. I don't need reefer. I don't snort. I don't stick nuts in my arms because I'm already high. High with the beauty of the woman that gave birth to me. Somebody else the other day asked me, do you know God? I said, yes, she died 14 years ago. What do you mean? I said, Mama, dear Mama, the first time I opened my eyes, there was a black woman putting a nipple from a breast in my mouth. Sustained me, having sustained me for 10 months in her womb, not 9. That's the sign. That was God, the God I knew. The other one is belief. Belief, and belief isn't fact. Belief is a hope. Belief is faith. Belief may not happen, but Mama did. Get me. And so whoever Papa did was, the man she pointed out to me that stood there is also part of that. Thus, Mama, God, Mama, Daddy, and I are the Trinity, the Holy Trinity. Dig it out. Check it out here. They haven't made people from dirt in a long time. They make them from sexual intercourse. Little fellow called spermatozoa. You ever heard of him? He runs up a little alley called fallopian tube. And he runs into a little thing called oval. He jumps in, take a seat. She gobbles him up, fertilizes him, and whoop comes the weevil. He jumps out. Here's a boy, here's a girl, here I'm something else. But nevertheless, you could see they're not going to invite me back to Turkey. But it took me 50 years to get it over. I want to thank the student government, the body of the school as a whole, those in administration who made the possibility of the AFA, etc. And for those who have been so nice, making the day the most comfortable one since I've arrived. I hope that the monologue so far, hope it will be a dialogue as soon as I finish, would cause you to at least do some more thinking. Don't accept what I say. Check it out. Read books about yourself. There are millions of them. Let no one tell you to the contrary. Read all kinds of religious dogmas and theories. Don't let anyone tell you this is it and there's no more. Read it all. Read mine. If you could read Mein Kampf, you could read anybody's Holy Bible. The Hindu Bhagavad Gita, the Muslim Quran, the Christian Holy Bible, New Testament, the Jewish Old Testament, the book of Ulamare, the teachings of Ulamare, that's the Yoruba religion, the teachings of Dambala Widow, the teachings of Budum, and by the way, it has nothing to do with witchcraft. The teachings of Ngai, the major god in Kenya, Unkulunkulu of South Africa, Ra, Ptah, Osiris, the god of resurrection, 4,000 years before Jesus, he was taught to raise men from the dead. He's known as God of resurrection. Read about your people in the past, the present. Understand the voice as it understood God. Understand Malcolm as you understood King. Understand these men. Understand Sojourner Truth as you understand Harriet Tubman. Go back into the past and read about your most beautiful and your most strong queen like Hatshepsut, who fought and drove out the Hyksos out of Egypt. And Zinger, who fought for 13 years ahead of her troops, defeating the Germans and the British and others, before she died on the battlefield. Queen Kahina, who stopped the Arabs in North Africa, died at the head of her troops. These are great and glorious African women. Read about the African woman who took the guts of a pig, took out the feet, clean it out, wash it out, cook it so her man could get a little protein and her children call it chitlinook, cripple steak, either way you want. The African woman who had sense enough to send her daughter to school when her man-child had to go in the workforce from before sunup to after sundown. Show me how you treat your woman, and I show you the condition of your race. Thank you.
Before you leave, we will now have questions and answers. Those who have questions, you can come and speak into the mic. Kenny, would you hold up your hand? What Hitler called the swastika was originally called the Gramadon, Gramadon. You will see Gramadons at the bottom sole of Buddha in Buddhist temples. You will see it in South America, used with respect to Quatapauca, the crucified god of the Mexicans, at the time when Mexico was called Azteca. You would also see it all over Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan. It goes back to about 1400 BC in the Nile Valley, and it was used as a symbol of peace. What Hitler did was to adopt it. The Germans under Kaiser Wilhelm and Otto von Bismarck captured what was then Togo. At a time when the other European powers and Great Britain, with the help of the United States, was conquering all of Africa, from 1830, when France invaded Suez, to 1884, when they took almost all of the lands on the coast and gave Congo to Leopold II. It was then when Germany
Germany was fighting France for Alsace-Lorraine, that the Germans realized that they weren't getting part of the action, went into Togo, took over Togo, and it is then that they adopted the eagle, the iron eagle, by the patron saint of Germany, an African by the name of Maurice, which they call Maurice of Aragon, along with the symbol that Maurice used as the bishop. You would notice if you go to the Museum of Natural History in New York, you would see a Togolese garment from the 14th century with the Gramadon and the Iron Cross and the eagle, which the German adopted from their colonial underlings, the Togolese, and that's where it came from. Well, what was called the mystery system, which is the educational system of the Nile Valley, centered at the Grand Lodge of Wasset, which is now called Luxor by the Arabs, is that every discipline, a child went in at age 7, a young boy, and he was not completed with education until age 47. He never left. It took 40 years to train an educated man who left with the title priest. So within that 40 years, he learned everything there was. And as such, he even influenced the Pharaoh because he decided most of the things the Pharaoh had to do. Thus, engineering, law, medicine, science, mathematics, everything was done and taught in the mystery system. And those students coming out of the mystery system were sent around the nation to be the teachers. So the mystery system was the educational system of the entire Nile Valley. Not only Egypt. Egypt became the zenith of what took place, the high cultures along the Nile. And so that's how the mystery system. Now, in order, like any society, there are groups of elite within the educational system. And they became the elite. Thus was necessary for them to have, quote unquote, passwords and so forth to maintain secrets amongst each other. Because education, believe it or not, is not for the masses. You must know it. The masses can't afford $1,300 a semester. Education is for elite few. It has always been. That's reality. You know, we want things to be, and so we say it is. But the reality is that count the amount of blacks who come to college. And you will see it is for select few. And so in those ancient days, it was yet for a select few what? Because very few people could read and write. And those who went to the mystery system became the intellectuals of their day. It helped because if you know all the disciplines, then you could bet. Then you don't talk about mystery. For example, my oldest girl is a physician, and when she was taking her exam in surgery, I was invited to come in the theater and look down from the gallery to see her perform. And while others were doing their open heart surgery work for grades, I sat beside my daughter, and when they started to take the heart out of the patient, I said, what a miracle. And my daughter said to me, Daddy, I'm surprised at you saying that. There ain't no miracle, you just made a mistake. I said, what are you talking about? She said, Daddy, you know, and you told me, what one man knows that the other doesn't know is no longer a miracle. It is the miracle to the man who doesn't know it. But to the person who knows it, it's just routine. It's no miracle. She was right, because I taught her that. So it's no mystery. It's a mystery only to the person who doesn't know it, but it isn't to one who performs it. So that's what it did. It teaches man. And the women had their own organization, by the way, sisters, because you must say, why, how come the little boys only? There were women organizations, and one of the reasons for that is that a man had to testify. One of the since at age 7, all the boys were circumcised. They also had to testify. A woman cannot testify, even in the Christian church. Look in your dictionary for the word testis and testify and see where the word testify come from. To testify, a man had to hold his penis out in his left hand, raise his right hand, and swear if he told the truth, told a lie, may God unman him. You can unman a woman if you got a testis. Kind of funny. So when women are testifying in these sacred churches, just tell them you're doing miracles. Yes. Self-education doesn't necessarily mean that you don't go to the university. Self-education is saying, along with the prescribed courses at the university, you have to do a certain amount of self-education. You have to take a certain amount of interest in yourself and as such study about yourself. The professors can do but so much for any of us. A bunch of it is going to have, first of all, your education doesn't take place in 4 walls of a university. Your training takes place there. Your education is going to come on the outside when you start to apply your training and acquire experience. It is said commonly, the center of education, and of course we believe that we've got that. What we are fed is a series of facts or a series of evidence, and then we take these evidence and regurgitate the answer to those evidence. But when you go outside and you get your experience, it is really then that your education starts. So to self-education, I meant that kind of education which you found in Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth and others. But don't stop your training in the college just for the self-education. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't have done it for myself, and I wouldn't encourage anyone to do that. I take all ends. I read everything and that I could get my hand on. I don't care. If the Ku Klux Klan is passing out some literature in the morning, I'll get some. Because you don't know what your enemy thinking if you don't find out from him. So I read anything. I read the Ku Klux Klan. I read the Moral Majority. I read what's the one that the guy got shot down on the airplane there, John Birch Society writings, and also read the Jehovah's Witness and the Mormons. I read everything. Because I don't know which one will kill me in the morning. All of them look crazy to me. The what? The Ankh and the what? Oh, the dollar? Oh, the green side of the American dollar with the pyramids and the sunbus and the eye of Horus. Well, if you recall, the first president of the United States, a terrorist by the name of George Washington. Oh, yeah. According to the British, you still go on to England, you see it written there, George Washington had 30,000 pounds on his head for terrorism. I'm talking about the murderer, George Washington. The slave owner, George Washington. See, isn't it strange that we see Hitler as a bad man? But you know, Hitler didn't enslave one black American. George Washington did. George Washington sold black folks the day of his inauguration from molasses to Barbados. But he's a good man. You see, you don't want to reason because that's me. You say, he's the president of my father. Hey, father, no country of mine. He has nothing to do with fatherhood of me. He's a slave master. the cabinet were slave masters, except Benjamin Franklin, because he was a Quaker. And that's why he lost becoming the first president. But anyhow, Washington was a member of the Masonic group. And as such, when the first union was founded, it was founded, and the Masons were the strongest force and allied themselves as a common unit within the founding group. It is so that they, in looking for symbols for their money, they took Masonic symbols, the Masons who had adopted it, the Freemasons who had adopted the 22 tablets they stole from Egypt, from the mystery system, and carried to York, England, and established what they call York Rites with 22 degrees. Later, in Scotland, they added 11 more, call it the Scottish Rites, and the 11 degrees they call the Effable Rites, which put Christianity into Freemasonry where it has no business. And it is so that they decided to use those symbols, the pyramids or house of fire, the word in Greek means house of fire, the sunburst which symbolized the power and strength of God, Ra, and the eye which symbolizes the Ujet, U-D-J-E-T, which is known as the ever-seen eye of Horus. That's the combination there. They did not stop there, because in the Supreme Court, the so-called Department of Justice, they then adopted from the scene of justice with Goddess Ma'at. Goddess Ma'at is shown with a crown on her head and a feather of truth. And there is the heart symbolically of Annie the scribe. And in the other part of the scale is a feather, and his heart is symbolically weighed against the feather of truth. And there, Kepra is recording. Anubis is there ready to swat him if his heart isn't correct. That was adopted with a woman with the blind with the same sword. But you notice one thing about that. There was no intent to have justice. The scale isn't balanced. One part of the scale is up and the other is down. It was never intent. The artist did what was right, because you don't have a democracy. It said a republic. You see, we don't read too well. There's nothing in the Constitution anywhere said democracy. It says a republic. One will rule and the other will be ruled. We could go and see other symbols adopted by the United States from your ancestry. And you say, well, how come they do all that and adopt all that from me and then enslave me? Easy. A thing called gunpowder and the cannon. In other words, I'm telling you, might is right. If the judge gives you 30 days in jail, would you go to jail voluntarily, just walk and go to jail? The only reason you go to jail is a man called a bailiff and another one called a marshal. And the marshal got a gun on his side. And there are umpteen marshals there with guns on their side. And the policemen in the hall waiting with guns on this side. So you decide, I'm going to jail. But take away those guns and you tell the judge to go to hell. And walk right out. Might is the thing that makes you go to jail. Not right. And there's no such thing as justice when you're broke. If you were broke and you had a case, you found guilty, you can't appeal when you're broke. Your lawyers can't buy the minutes of the trial when you're broke. So you can't get justice. When last did they hang or electrocute a rich man? Son. See, like Patty Hearst. He could get psychiatrists to disagree with psychiatrists who disagree with psychiatrists. They can buy justice. No justice for poor people. You gotta have money to guarantee justice. Let's say you were poor and you had shot, what's his name in the house there? Regamus. You wouldn't have been in no crazy house. You'd have been under the crazy house. But his daddy had money. Umpteen pounds of loot. Do you think that he didn't talk to the judge? You think that Patty Hearst didn't talk to the man who was going to free her? He said, even if she was found guilty, he was going to give her pardon. Talking about the peanut vendor man from Carterville. Justice. I know it's frustrating and you believe in all the beautiful things. I've been in armed forces, I've been all over the place, and I haven't seen justice yet. I've seen justice. Clan and the what side? Clandestine? The jackass who said that the other one is clandestine is just as clandestine as the other one. You see what happened? What happened is that one man always believed that he got the right way. The fact is that either Mason is a clandestine. Because the Mason in America got his garbage from England. And the English stole 22 tablets from Egypt and established what they call York rights. Who gave it to them? The Scots, I said before, added to that and called the Effingham rights. 11 were the Scottish rights. So when one man called another man a clandestine, what does he mean about it? He got his the same way the other one got it, by crookery. A thief can't call another one a thief with no sense of dignity. Unfortunately, is that we take the leftover from everybody and think we got something. How could you talk about a secret society marching in the middle of the street with top hats? You're not secret if you march in the middle of the street. Contradictions. How are you going to build a building with top hats? People are masons with a trowel and with mortar. But again, you see, Europeans do it, so it's got to be right. So we get into it too. How could you talk about the Grand Lodge of Luxor and then at the same time say that it comes from Solomon? If the Grand Lodge is in Luxor, Solomon ain't got nothing to do with it. Solomon is only 991 and 971 BC. The Grand Lodge of Karnak, the Grand Lodge of Saqqara, more than 3,000 years before the birth of Solomon. King Solomon has nothing to do with Freemasonry. Nothing, absolutely. It is a distortion of the work of the Africans along the Nile that early Hebrews did by putting Solomon into it. I suggest that they go to the Grand Lodge of Luxor, which the ruins are still there, in a place called Luxor, and see for themselves the symbols, see for themselves the kind of aprons and the kind of vestment that the ancient Africans used in the mystery system. See for themselves the grand architect that they were talking about. See for themselves when Amenhotep redesigned the Grand Lodge and used the opium as the means of paying for this. There was no England, no Scotland, no Wales in existence in 4100 BC when the first Grand Lodge was built at a place called Saqqara. S-A-K-H-A-R-A, which is now spelled also S-A-Q-Q-A-R-A. Imhotep designed the first temple. The man who was the multi-genius more than 2,000 years before Michelangelo gained that term. Go and take a copy of the Egyptian Book of the Dead and the Papyrus of Ani and look at the Masonic symbols in there and see if anybody today using that. And then see if they had any British top hat, white shirt, black tie, and cut away. As a matter of fact, that type of dress didn't exist yet. That's strictly European. In spite of the Charter House in England, the Charter House in France, and the Charter House in Italy. Nobody called themselves ancient, free and accepted, or ancient. How you gonna call yourself ancient if you're back there? They didn't use the word ancient. So those who call themselves free and accepted, those who call themselves ancient, free and accepted, they're still imposters, both of them. Because no one over there carried them through. No one over there carried them naked. No one over there raised them from a dead level to a perpendicular. No one over there put a toe line and a cow toe on them. It was stone, and it says that a man could not be raised from a dead level to a perpendicular unless he was raised in the Grand Lodge. So they're all imposters. You can't raise somebody in Alabama. You got to go to Egypt.
All right, Black Power, Black Power. That's Dr.Ben. You know, the question and answer, a little piece of it. So with that being done, you know, that's our show for tonight. Like I said, it's an ode to the ancestors. They always did send that love out. But like I said, though, with that being Rock Storm family, you know, that's how we do. I want to open the lines up real quick. We got a lot of lines open at once. Let me see. Black Power.
Black Power.
Black Power, what's going on, Chief? How you tonight? Just wrapping up on the end and see if anybody got any comments to add to what we heard.
Excellent. You picked a great video with the elder Dr.Ben, but he's really speaking on the time in which we're living in right now. Line for line, word for word, jewel for jewel. You know, Black Power for you, Brother Born, for putting it out there, because he's speaking, you know, the elder past, but he's speaking to the reality and the present state of mind that we're in right now. So, good looking out for blessing the family with that lecture by the elder.
Black Power, you know, we can only do what's needed for the family. We gotta add on, man. to add on, we got to always revisit our elders.
Alrighty. And could you give us the title for that lecture right there for the family who may not know, Brother Born?
Oh, all right, excuse me. That's the Black Man Awakening.
Okay. Thank you for that, brother. That's much needed.
Let me get all the information on it, don't. And like you said, he did that in Tuskegee. My glasses. So I got everything.
Funny because after you study Dr. Ben and you study
Hold on.
Okay.
It's Black Man Not Awake. It's Black Man Wake Up. Black Man Wake Up. That's what it is. Black Man Wake Up. Excuse me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a blessing right there because, over here on Feet on the Ground, I think this is probably one of the few platforms, deep analysts. We do a deep analysis of all our elders' work. And when you do a deep analysis, you come to conclusions about the present state of mind we're in right now. And I think that hit the hit the nail right on the head, regarding the discourse we're in now. Because whether if you take the mythological chronology of Egypt or the mythological chronology of the Bible, they still going to run neck and neck, and you're going to see the Europeans still having to use our ancestors to validate their mythology. And it's funny because you have Africans who are sworn Masons who uphold the legacy of King Solomon, and a lot of them not knowing that King Solomon is a plagiarized version of Amohotep, you know what I mean? And for you to pull, I've been saying this for a while, but for you to pull out this lecture with the elder and have the elder elaborate on it, it's a jewel, brother. Tripod.
Tripod. We can take study guide, so to come back. He put a lot of information in there, action packed. So I hope we had the tabs out before this went on. Any other family guy, anything they want to add on? Thank you for that, Brother Maker. Brother Maker right there give an excellent summation of the situation that we're dealing with. Glad to have Dr. Ben, his words and words of wisdom from the elder, just dealing with how we should be reacting, as the brother said, to our time today. We needed something that was timely, also informative.
Ashe.
So, with that being said, family, we're gonna go ahead and close the show down. We ain't gonna let it go too far. But we like to
no family got no feedback, Brother Boy. Ain't no family got any feedback on that great lecture right there. I know somebody got something.
There's enough people on the line, but ain't nobody. The family was just sitting back and listening. There's enough people on the line. The lines is open, but they just relaxing.
Okay. I had to ask.
The lines is open. So, but I thank everybody for coming out tonight. Definitely, and we definitely thank you for tuning in, listening to the works of the elders. Get a chance, go through the archives, pick up a couple other jewels, but take this work in. We'll be discussing it in later times, and it's always something that's good for you to hear. Something also good for the youth, good for just listening to while you doing dishes, doing your push-ups, or whatever have you. But with that being said, tune in next week, next Tuesday for News, Rules, and More. more news. We'll be updating you on all the news that we see fit, and all the news will be given to you with an African view.
Shay, can I make an announcement too, Brother Bourne?
Sure.
For all the FOG refugees out there, and family that may be listening, be on the lookout for. We're gonna have a good theme regarding the history of geography. A lot of times we talk history, past and present and future, but oftentimes we don't discuss locations. And I think it's important that we go over the, emphasize the importance of maps and the science of geography in relationship to history and in relation to politics. So probably next Slaughterhouse Saturday we can go over that in detail, brother. So I just want to put that out there.
All right, Black Power. So y'all hear the theme for next Saturday. That's going to be geography and the understanding of how geography affects politics and how we should be looking at that today.
And history, the historical relationship, or just the context of geography in relation to history and politics.
Yes, sir.
And if we're talking nationality, if we're talking Pan-Africanism, there has to be a focal point of geography. For a Pan-African movement, as the one we're involved in, the geography of importance for us is Mother Africa. And starting from that geographical location and spreading out, you smell me, that's really the focal point we like to base on. It should be a great show.
And so look forward to that. That'll be 10 p.m. Eastern. As every show will be 10 p.m. Eastern. We'll have a nice Think Tank Thursday lined up. You'll get the understanding of that coming up. We're tuning in this Tuesday coming up. News, and more news. That'll be 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. on the west side, the best side. Nah, we do. And with that being said, we'd like to close out with the praise to the ancestors, same way that we come in. And that's for the praise Nat Turner, glory to Garvey, long live the spirit of Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, praise Harriet Tubman, glory to Ida B. Wells, long live the spirit of Sister Fannie Lou Hamer. A baby 48.
Cracker in the trunk.
House nigga 2.